Now, just as you had different types of guns, you also had different types of rounds. The round that most people are familiar with is the cannonball, or solid shot, as it is called. The solid shot is one solid piece of iron. Now, the field artillery we were talking about earlier is called the 6-pounder because it fires a 6-pound solid shot. The cannonball is used to batter down fortifications, masonry structures, walls. Not very effective against personnel, although if you're in front of it, it is very effective against you. We have stories from the Civil War about soldiers who stuck their legs out. Cannonball came downfield, and pretty soon they had a new nickname, Old Hopalong. But, like I said, it's one big piece of metal. So as an anti-personnel round, the field artillery had a different type of round called spherical case or case shot, later called shrapnel. The case shot is filled with musket balls, black powder, and then that's all packed into the round, and then a fuse is inserted. And the fuse is designed to burn so long. When the gunner calls for a round, you might hear case shot, 3 seconds. That means the fuse is cut, so it'll burn 3 seconds after the round is fired from the cannon. 3 seconds later, boom, this whole thing blows apart. And if the commander's timed it right, all those metal fragments rain down on the enemy army, causing a lot more damage than just one solid shot of cannonball would do. A third type of round that was used was called canister. Canister is just like the case shot in that it's filled with musket balls, bits of iron, and black powder. But there's no fuse. When you fire canister, it explodes right out your weapon. That turns your gun into a giant shotgun. And when you hear your commander call for canister, that means that your gun is about to be overtaken by the enemy army. And if you hear your commander call for double canister, that means you really better be on the move, loading and firing your weapon. Some soldiers who were stationed at Fort Scott in the 1840s may have heard that command in a battle they were in during the Mexican War. The Battle of Buena Vista in northern Mexico, 2 companies of infantry stationed at Fort Scott and 1 company of dragoons were present at that battle. General Zachary Taylor was the commander of the American forces, and he faced a numerically superior Mexican army commanded by Santa Anna that outnumbered him 2-1. At one point during the battle, the American forces were being driven from the field. The dragoon observers said that the soldiers were deserting the field in droves, that the panic was contagious, and that it spread to all the ranks. But 2 things staved off a disaster. 1, a gallant charge by the dragoons against Mexican artillery, and 2, a brave stand by the American artillery. Just as the American lines were about to break, General Taylor told his artillery commander to double shot your guns and give them hell. And so the double canister helped to stave off a disaster at Buena Vista, and it helped carry General Taylor into the White House. Now, all of these rounds we're discussing are attached to a powder bag by means of a wooden disc called a sabot. When you loaded the weapon first, the powder bag went in, followed by the round, and then one of the cannoneers used a vent pick to puncture the powder bag. Then another cannoneer would insert what is called the friction primer. The friction primer is a little tube filled with gunpowder. You've got a plug of beeswax at the end. You insert that friction primer in the tube. When you pull the pin, it's like striking a match. The powder inside the tube ignites, blows out the beeswax, the sparks ignite the powder in the bag, boom! That's what creates your big boom. Now with the demonstration today, you need a volunteer to go catch the cannonball. We can't afford to lose our cannonball.
I'll just get a pair
We'll
of
give you a big mitt. There we go, we got a volunteer. No, we don't actually, we're not actually using live rounds. The highway's just over the hill. And people get upset when we start lobbing cannonballs into their cars. We have to use just blank rounds. Well, we use black powder, but there's no actual rounds that are fired out of the gun.
Sir? On your bag of powder,
yeah,
did the amount of charge, did you have different bags with the amount of powder for different charges? Length of fire?
Probably,
or were they all the same?
well, I'm not 100% certain. I'm assuming that they might have measured more powder, but most of when they got the rounds to the battlefield, the only thing they really had to prepare was the fuses.
Yeah.
And most of them were already pre-prepared, pre-measured rounds.
But that was for a certain length to push the cannonball, or the ball
Right,
so
there
far.
was the more powder you had,
Right.
the more firepower you had.
Right.
But generally these rounds were effective for about a mile.